This is the CHRILLCAST. I'm Chris.
And I'm Will.
I'm whatever they got left.
You know what? Before I say Throwback Thursday in my Throwback Thursday voice, which I've said twice now, so I don't need to say it again. My favorite comment the other day I saw on our podcast was one of the ones with Gnarly, and somebody's like, "This is like completely hilarious." Somebody's like, "It's like Chris goes, haha, I'm Chris." Will goes, haha, I'm Will, and then Gnarly's like, "I'm Gnarly." It's totally true. Like we're like these super like, haha, I'm Chris, haha, I'm Will, and then like
She just
our guests are like,
cold and flat.
yeah, I know. He's just like, "I'm Gnarly," and I was like, "Oh yeah."
I'm Adam.
Anyways, yes, we are peppy, but I'm not this peppy in real life, so I guess it's an act for the podcast. I don't know, whatever. It's just whatever. It's YouTube.
You're doing it for the views.
Adam, why don't you tell everybody about yourself? Who are you?
I ask myself that all the time. I'm a YouTuber. I've been doing this for 11 years or so. On this channel that they are featuring right there, I've been doing retro gaming stuff primarily for the better part of, well, over a decade actually. And I cover a lot of subjects, even though what you're seeing is Back to the Future there. I made an animated Back to the Future 4 and 5 film out of the Back to the Future, the game, the Telltale Studios produced. It's actually my only video with over 1 million views. But yeah, you don't really see a whole lot of gameplay on my channel, though. What you see is a lot of discussion of video games, history of video games, traveling to odd locations to discover more about random video games. It's a hodgepodge of weird.
And to be fair, you're getting pretty close with this PS2 video to hitting that 1 million.
That is the epitome of the evergreen video. And can I vent for a second?
Yep.
So, this is one of the perfect flaws with the YouTube view concept. The PlayStation 2 is by far the most successful console ever made. Everyone has one. Everyone knows what it is. It's not, to be frank, it's not that interesting for that reason. But everyone wants to know how to fix it. Hence, it does that. I make a video where I do the exact same thing with something odd like a Neo Geo CD. Cool. Nobody cares. It's like, how often do you see somebody tear down a Neo Geo CD? Never. I was literally the only person to ever do it on YouTube. But no one gives a fuck because it's not PS2. And it's just one of those things where, like, isn't that more interesting than the PS? No, apparently not, because it doesn't have a practical application. I get it, but fuck.
That is the most times.
I'm a lot less filthy mouthed on my channel now. I used to be worse.
I was gonna
you guys
say,
are bringing it all out for some reason.
I was gonna say that's the most times I've heard Adam drop that.
Yes, it definitely
in a
is.
video in a long time.
Yeah, I don't know. You're bringing out like retro me.
If you guys want to see retro Adam, no, you can just hear him.
Well, I mean, it is Throwback Thursday. So.
It is.
There
It
you
is
go.
Throwback Thursday, and it is perfect that this is the episode where we're dropping, a bunch of profanity, because this game, maybe not the Xbox version, but the N64 version definitely contained a lot of profanity. And
I believe with the Xbox version, once you beat it, it unlocks the profanity.
that's an odd unlock.
Well, it's supposed to give you a reason to go back.
Huh.
I vaguely remember that being a thing.
It's weird because half the appeal
wrong.
of the game is the
I
cute
know.
squirrel swearing.
Yeah, it's like, could you guys miss the point more?
Oh, that's hilarious. Rare came over to Xbox with a bunch of like franchises that we just never really got to see the full, what I would consider the epitome of those games, or like the full, I don't even know, the fully realized version of those games, which I would have expected Microsoft to bring out something like Conker Live and Reloaded. And this is Throwback Thursday discussing Conker Live and Reloaded. So now that we're done getting Adam to swear on our podcast,
Well, it's not done.
I know it's not, but I'm gonna pretend it is while I talk about this at least. Conker Live and Reloaded is a platform video game developed by Rare, exclusively released for the Xbox in June 2005. The single-player mode is a remake of the 2001 game Conker's Bad Fur Day, which is probably the version most of us are more familiar with than this version, but the Xbox version is what we're talking about today. It was originally launched without a multiplayer mode at least not a live multiplayer mode on the N64, but not one at all, I don't think, right? There's no multiplayer on N64.
I don't remember there being, but I never would have even bothered with that, to be honest.
So there is a live multiplayer version on the Xbox. The development for this was started the second they came over to Microsoft Game Studios in 2002. It was re-released on April 17, 2018. Backwards compatible with the Xbox. It's also on Rare Replay, but I think that's the N64 version.
That is the N64 version. This was curiously absent, and it's probably because they knew they were adding it as a backwards compatible title.
Maybe. There's definitely some thought process there. I mean, the N64 version is definitely the more popular version, so that might be part of it. The other half of that, you're right, might be the fact that they're going to make it backwards compatible at some point.
I mean, like, they put Grabbed with the Ghoulies on that collection. That was another OG Xbox game.
I was surprised.
Like, there's nothing that's really prevented it other than we'll probably just do this separately.
Mm-hmm.
I would assume that's all it was. They're like, we're going to do OG Xbox compatibility anyway.
Mm-hmm.
We'll give them the N64 version. It's really weird when you think about it. The Xbox One allows you to play both versions of that game. It's the only platform that does.
Mm-hmm. It is kind of weird to think of it that way, yeah.
So I guess,
other than a PC, I guess. But
I guess what I wanted to get into is what do you guys remember about this game when it first released on the N64 and then re-released on the Xbox? What do you guys remember?
I remember an adorable squirrel swearing. And thinking it was so cool. It's kind of like South Park in a way.
Isn't this the opening cutscene where he says...
it is.
so iconic.
Yeah, you're right. Like, South Park's a really great way to compare it. That was probably, honestly, a large part of the inspiration, because that was a weird cultural shift where it was like, why don't we take cutesy things and make them horrible? Like, in a horrible in, like, an adult way, you know what I mean? And I at that point, N64 was full of little, like, puppet type of characters that everyone was like, oh, that's so sweet. I'm amazed Nintendo ever allowed that game to exist.
Yeah, it is very surprising.
But I mean, the game has like a million warnings about like, this is not for kids. Holy shit! Don't let your kid anywhere near this. Shoot the kid in the head. Don't let him play it. But it's basically. I remember when that was first coming out and hearing all the rumors of like, really, Nintendo's going to do something like that? Okay. And then when he actually played it, my friends and I were checking it out, and it was just kind of like, huh. He's really aggressive and violent. I love this. This is the best thing ever. And we ended up beating that whole game like multiple times. I really liked the N64 version.
And I have to say, Microsoft has teased us so many times with a potential remake of this game. It's not even funny.
Super Lucky's Tale.
I know. Or Project Spark.
Oh, yeah. Spark. Oh my gosh.
I just love a drunk squirrel.
I just remember it's fucking hell. Now you're bringing this up again. I remember when they premiered Super Lucky's Tale at E3, and they were talking about like, oh, some big franchise. Everybody was like all hyped, and I remember thinking maybe Conker for some reason. Then they show this weird trailer with this like red foxtail like going all over. I'm like, oh my god, they're finally doing it. And it's like, what the hell is this? This is Conker made by Nintendo, as opposed to what. This is what I think Nintendo expected it to be, as opposed to what it ended up being. That was like a weird Mandela effect, alternate reality thing happening there. Sorry.
So
Super Lucky Tales is bad. It was just like right up there with like, why would you do that to me? That's like every fake announcement for like some game you're waiting for, and it turns out nothing.
Okay, so I want to get to the meat and potatoes here. When Rare went to Microsoft, I was very confused because Rare to me was always a Nintendo-owned subsidiary or company, and like Rare was like literally Rare and Nintendo to me were the same thing when that happened, and I was shocked that this happened at the time that it happened because I was expecting Banjo 3, I was expecting some kind of follow-up in the James Bond franchise. I was expecting another Conker, another Donkey Kong 64 or country type game, and then boom, nope, Rare's going to Microsoft. I was like, what?
I was still expecting all those things, but on the Xbox.
Yeah, when that first happened, I kind of remember being like a little surprised. I understood that Nintendo did not wholly own Rare, but it was like they were so tangentially connected. It was just so bizarre, to the point where I think the impression I always got studying this retroactively is that it shocked everyone, including the people at Rare, because like, I mean, don't forget they still released a game on the GameCube. Star Fox Dinosaur Planet was them.
Yeah.
Or whatever that is, Star Fox Dinosaur Adventure.
It was Star Fox Adventure,
which was called Dinosaur Planet.
Correct.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
like that was theirs. Grabbed by the Ghoulies was in development for the GameCube at one point, and it is, and I would bet you it's at least conceptually, this game was supposed to be on the GameCube. Maybe not actual development phase, but it wouldn't surprise me at all. So it was, to say the least, a little shocking, and it did create a bunch of problems because obviously Rare was no longer going to be developing Donkey Kong, since that's a Nintendo-owned IP. And then it created the problem and the reason we still don't have the GoldenEye re-release or remake. We still don't have that because of that situation.
What was that one that came out on like the PlayStation Move and whatnot? What was that?
So there was the name GoldenEye is not what is owned. GoldenEye is just part of the Bond franchise. So there was GoldenEye Rogue Agent for original Xbox, GameCube, and PS2. Then there was another game called like GoldenEye on the Wii, but it was a complete up remake. It was just with instead of Pierce Brosnan, it was why am I spacing on his name? The new one.
Daniel Craig.
Yeah, it was him, but it wasn't like a remake of the game. It wasn't a re-release of the game. It wasn't the infamous GoldenEye HD that people have been wanting forever. And the reason you'll never get that is that the property of that game is split across 3 different companies.
Yeah.
One is Nintendo, one is Microsoft, and the other is EA. And they cannot get along long enough to allow that out.
Which is really disappointing because the game was awesome.
I agree, and I mean, does anyone really dispute that game would do gangbusters? Like, but it's not going to happen unless all 3 of them come to a table. Which I was actually, I think I said this in a video at one point when suddenly Microsoft and Nintendo were kind of warming up to each other. I was like, ooh, maybe. Because if those 2 get along, I mean, EA likes money and they're a developer, like they'll get along. So they have to be like, yeah, we own the license, but go ahead, free money, that's fine. But
yeah, we'll just take our 30% cut. You guys can have the rest.
Exactly. And then exactly. And then you just release it on the Switch and Xbox One, and then everybody who owns a PlayStation just goes, oh, okay. But that would have been, that could work, and it's not. There's no reason it couldn't still work, but that is the reason it has not worked.
Yeah, because the part that Microsoft owns is the Rare part, right? That's what
they own the development assets, but they don't own the license to the game. Nintendo, I believe, owns the at least the license. They don't own the license. They own some aspect of it because it was actually exclusively signed for their hardware originally. I don't know the minutia of that contract. I just know that it's broken up between those 3 companies.
So I've got 2 more things I want to kind of bring up here. One, and you guys can just laugh at this. You don't have to contribute if you don't want to, but I read somewhere that Microsoft, when they bought Rare, thought they were getting Donkey Kong. Insert laughing Shigeru Miyamoto emoticon somewhere in there.
If that's true, they really screwed up.
Dude, honestly, when you go back and you look at all the mistakes that Microsoft made with the Xbox brand, like, I mean, we're talking including the launch of the Xbox One, like, this is not new for them. They make a lot of really bad mistakes. No part of what you're telling me surprises me. Like, I mean, did you know that the Xbox 360 was actually doing really, you know how the Xbox brand never does well in Japan?
Right.
Like, infamously? The Xbox 360 was actually doing really well for a little bit because what was happening was Microsoft said, okay, OG Xbox flopped, but rather than us develop for this, we'll give the Xbox 360 to Japanese developers and say just make whatever you think you need to make, which was the correct call. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, Japanese developers are making lots of anime-based content, and you got a lot of these hentai chicks doing shoot-'em-ups and all this stuff that, frankly, they would love. And it's actually succeeding. Then at some point they send the stuff over, back to North America to the Redmond office in the U.S., just being like, yeah, here's the kind of the cool exclusives that are coming out in Japan. And Microsoft of the U.S. was like, you're saying this crap with these cartoon chicks and the big old biddies. This is what is representing our product right now. And they were like, yeah, and it's doing well. They're like, this can't have our name on it. Shut that down. Give them Call of Duty. It's like, they don't want that. No, give them Call of Duty. Like it. And I've always likened this in reverse to how the Japanese love things like date sims and graphic novels. What if a company that doesn't really make video game consoles, so let's say Toshiba, Japanese company, was like, hey, we're going to get into American video games. We're going to come over there, we're going to make a console, and we're only going to have graphic novels and date sims. How well do you think that shit's going to perform?
As well as the Vita.
Yeah.
I mean, the comical lack of understanding of the market you're going into, like, a high school student could have told you what to do there, and you fucked it up. And so it's just like, it does not surprise me that Microsoft was like, oh, I thought we were getting Donkey Kong. Oh, well, whatever. Like, the Xbox was made, like, on a bet, right? Like, its original, like, foundation is two guys being like, working at Microsoft, being, fuck, you know, it'd be a good idea if we made a video game console. All right, let's do it. And that's where it started. It wasn't like some big corporate initiative. I mean, that's how they convinced them to actually make it, but it was literally just two guys being like, wouldn't that be fucking cool if we made a video game console? It's not a well thought out process.
So that was how we got Lost Odyssey, though, and was it Blue Dragon and a couple of those other RPGs, was they were making that to appeal to the Japanese market. They wanted more RPGs on the Xbox specifically for the Japanese market. And I think the company that makes that it's similar to like the name of it is similar to Monolith Soft, which is the Nintendo company that makes Xenoblade stuff. I just cannot for the life of me remember what that company's called, unless it is Monolith Soft, but I could be wrong. But yeah, so they made a bunch of RPGs specifically for the Japanese market, kind of like the Shin Megami Tensei 9 was put on, which is not actually Shin Megami Tensei 9, but they called it Shin Megami Tensei 9. So, whatever.
I'll defer to you on that. You would know.
So they're actually on number 5, so the fact that they called it Shin Megami Tensei 9, unless this is like some kind of Back to the Future type thing, I don't know how in the heck they got to 9 before they even got to Shin Megami Tensei 4. But, you know, it's a Microsoft console, so learning how to count's not the first part of, you know, putting things out on a Microsoft console.
Yeah, right.
So true.
Second thing that I was going to say, because I started off with the Shigeru Miyamoto Donkey Kong laughing thing, this game was actually meant to be more offensive and profane than the first one. And then when Microsoft got wind of it, they're like, nah, shut it down. Did you know that?
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Missing the core point of what made it work.
They wanted to make this game, I think it was going to be called Conker Uncensored or something like that. They're like, oh, we're going to the Xbox? You mean we can make games way worse than they are now? Not worse in like the sense of like, you know, bad games, but worse in the sense of like,
vulgar.
Yes.
No, that was supposed to be part of the appeal of the Xbox when it was first coming out. It was supposed to be more mature. So
Rare was excited to do Conker 2 is what they wanted to make. And Microsoft said, nah, fam, just remake Conker and make it less edgy. It's like, what? This doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Then they said, start getting ready for the Kinect.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's honestly, I mean, I love the OG Xbox and the 360, what they ultimately turned out to be, but it really, they didn't have what you would call competent leadership until Phil Spencer.
Yes.
Like, they basically did like 15 years of just like, I don't fucking know, just throw money at it and we'll see what happens. And and sometimes it worked and sometimes it was insane. But this was a perfect example. And don't get me wrong, I like this game, bringing it back around to this, but I'd be lying if I said this was as good as the N64 version. And I think where it initially hit me was like you're playing the opening sequence and you get up there, you get like right now what you're doing or what we're seeing where he gets the key and all that, you get up there and right after that he sees the gargoyle thing that he has to hit with the frying pan, and I think right around there he says something and it's bleeped out and he actually like reacts to that and he's just like, why am I not hearing the swear or something to that effect? And then I was like, I don't know if I'm going to keep doing this.
Actually, that was Rare digging at Microsoft for censoring the game.
Oh, I know that, but that set the tone for the whole game. It was like, okay, so it's just going to be like this. It's going to be South Park without teeth. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to watch that. I don't want to play that. I still liked the game, but like I said, it didn't have the charm of it. It missed the entire point.
Yeah, exactly.
When you got a game like Halo with Sergeant Johnson just screaming at you, and then you got this game, like, you've missed the core audience with the Xbox, and you've missed the core audience that enjoyed the N64 version by censoring it. I think this game was a product of the time where Microsoft's like, we need a kids game, let's buy Rare. Oh, this isn't a kids game, what did we do wrong here? And then they were like, let's release it censored so it can appeal to children. but it still is not what they missed every audience they could have hit.
I have no idea what the decision making process was with this. It was still fine, but it's watered down, so it's a lesser version.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, like you said, it's just a consequence of them not really understanding what they were doing. Like, I believe that if Phil Spencer had been there at the time, this would have been the full force game that we all envisioned, because that's like the only guy who's ever run that branch who understands that. But man, that took him a while.
I think that this game would have been Conker 2 if you had Phil Spencer running Microsoft when this came out.
Most likely.
Yeah.
And
though, to be fair, he's there now and we haven't seen Conker 2.
Well, you know, you got to give it a little bit of time. I mean, they're bringing back Battletoads.
Hey, we're going to hear about it in July. Just wait.
Has Battletoads released? Battletoads hasn't released yet. Did I just misspeak?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
To be fair, most of the Rare development staff left Rare shortly after the acquisition, because it was probably after they did this, and they're like, so Microsoft just cut off our balls, and we can't. They're forcing us to make weird things that we don't really want to make, and then they just vanished.
Yeah,
they pretty much fell apart. So they just owned a few IPs that they don't want to use until Rare Replay, which is the first time they really did anything other than force them to make Kinect games.
Yep. It seems like they might be coming back, because Sea of Thieves is pretty good, and then they're having another IP come out this year, I think, or next year.
Yeah, that looked interesting. It was like a wilderness-looking thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So my closing thought, and I'll give you guys a chance to make yours, is why is Rare Replay still not on PC?
You mean like on the a Microsoft Windows version or a Steam version?
I want Rare Replay on something on the computer, because it's not on the computer at all right now.
I just find that surprising. Don't they have that whole cross-platform thing? I don't game on PC. It's not my arena at all. So,
yeah, it's not. It's like one of the few Xbox One games that hasn't made it to PC yet. I've looked for it a lot.
Is it just because it'd be a pain to emulate all of them on the PC? Or
I don't think so. But go ahead. What's your closing thought, Will?
About Conker, about what you said, or about the actual topic?
This is no the topic. We're closing out the video. What's your final thought? Sorry.
I think the thing is that this was actually the first way I played this game, so I really did enjoy this in the original Xbox, and I went back and played it on the N64 and realized that one was so much better because of the swearing. And like I said before about being like South Park, it's an interesting concept, and I think that looking back on the change of this game really was emblematic of what Microsoft was doing to Rare. They essentially destroyed that brand. Like every game that they made from them was kind of terrible until recently. And I think it started off with this one.
Yeah, pretty much. They basically just finished up Grabbed by the Ghoulies because it was already mostly done. Mm-hmm. This was their first big, Xbox project. It cut off their balls, and they were like, all right, the hell with this.
Yep.
And then they got Cameo and Viva Pinata and
all
those types of games after that. And that
stuff
was 360.
They were kind of forced into that. Yeah, we need kid-friendly content. You're our kid-friendly group. Have you played anything we've ever made?
Yeah.
No. You have little cartoons. That makes you a kid-friendly. Okay, you don't get it.
And even though I didn't necessarily like Banjo Nuts and Bolts because of what they did to Banjo, I love the opening of that game because it's so sarcastic and dry like the original Banjo games were.
Yeah. The thing is, that's not a bad game. It was just not a Banjo-Kazooie game.
Exactly. So, I would love to see a new Conker game. I would definitely buy it. I would play it. And I do miss the times when Rare would do things like this.
I still hold out some hope for that one. Only because Microsoft has made it oddly easy to access not only this game, but also the N64 version. Like, you can play Conker Live and Reloaded on all 3 Xbox platforms.
Yep.
It works on all of them. And then they even have it, like I said before, you can play both this and the N64 version on the Xbox One. And this version runs in 4K on an Xbox One X. There
you go, Will.
They have generated some interest in it, and it would not surprise me if we see, depending on how digital sales went of this particular version, it would not really surprise me if we saw something called Conker Bad Fur Day 2 or Conker's Second Fur Day or whatever the cutesy title they come up with on Xbox Series X. I
wouldn't even be surprised with something super sarcastic like Conker's sad for a day or something. I don't know, something stupid.
Mhm.
Anyways,
That's actually not bad.
as always, I'm Chris.
Like the S is a reverse 2. Sorry.
Yeah,
that would
there
be
you go.
Yeah, that's good.
Or a 5 for no reason.
Yeah.
It's just a 5.
Yeah, we missed all the others because Microsoft can't count. There you go.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry, you guys are doing the finale. Oh, and I'm that guy making all the really bad jokes. Bye.
And we will see you.
On the next CHRILLCAST. Bye, guys.
Bye.